and they have consistently voted against funding for border security. You can't make this stuff up. They say we don't need more money. We just need a president who follows the law. We hear that again and again. We heard that last night in the Rules Committee. Now, I hope that they're not implying that the former president, a rapist who was just ordered by a jury to pay $83 million for defaming his victim, I hope they're not saying that he follows the law. He's been indicted 4 times with 91 felony counts. I mean, this guy's been indicted more times than he's been elected. Give me a break. That's who's calling the shots around here?
That's Democratic Congressmember Jim McGovern calling out MAGA Republicans who are not only vowing to kill any border security bill that is being negotiated on a bipartisan basis between Democrats and reasonable Republicans in the Senate, but the MAGA Republicans in the House of Representatives have spent the day starting impeachment proceedings against Alejandro Mayorkas, the Secretary of Homeland Security, at the exact same time that Secretary Mayorkas has been trying to negotiate a border bill. This is all performative cosplay fascist theater by MAGA Republicans because Donald Trump has stated that he wants to run in 2024 on whining about the border. Look, it's his own statements. Look what he posted. I don't need a big, complex, Democrat-oriented border bill. Or here's his other statements. A border bill is not necessary to stop the millions of people, many from jails and mental institutions located all over the world, that are pouring into our country. He goes, it is an invasion, but goes, don't do anything about it, everybody. Don't do anything about it. Then he acts like, by the way, things were just so perfect when he was in charge, which, by the way, is just factually incorrect. And I know we obviously all know that for a variety of reasons, but the media doesn't even fact check him when it comes to the border. I mean, look, in 2019, there were more illegal immigration crossings than in any one of Obama's 8 years in office. There were over $1.3 million border crossings during the last year of the Trump administration pre-COVID. By the way, the Biden administration's deported more than the Trump administration ever did. Folks, that's just the data. And I know legacy media, no one wants to talk about the data, but that's the data, folks. I'll talk a little bit more about this bipartisan border deal in just a moment, but let me take you through some of these hearings that were taking place today where MAGA Republicans want to impeach Alejandro Mayorkas, the Homeland Security Secretary, which would be the first impeachment of a cabinet secretary since like the Civil War era. And this is how MAGA Republicans are spending their time. Fortunately, there are Democrats like Dan Goldman and Jim McGovern and Garcia and others out there who are pushing the message, appropriately so, that these MAGA Republicans are full of it and that they are harming our country. Here's Democratic Congressmember Dan Goldman at the committee hearing where they were talking about impeaching Alejandro Mayorkas today. Play this clip.
This, on the other hand, is an impeachment process that you are moving forward because you claim that Secretary Mayorkas, who's obviously working under the direction of President Biden, is failing to secure the border. The irony of the fact that Secretary Mayorkas has spent the last 2 months plus with a bipartisan group of senators negotiating legislation that would address the problems at the border should not be lost on anyone. You are sitting here right now trying to impeach a Secretary of Homeland Security for neglecting his duties literally while he is trying to perform his duties and negotiate legislation. Now, the real reason we are here, as we all know, is because Donald Trump wants to run on immigration as his number one issue in the November 2024 election. And you don't have to take my word for it, because he said it himself. And last week, numerous Republicans echoed his call. Why would we actually solve the problems at the border when it is such a good political message to use for the election. And Leader McConnell even reiterated in a closed-door meeting of the Republican members of the Senate that we're in a quandary, he said, because our candidate wants to run on immigration, and we don't want to get in the way of our candidate. Now, I know this weekend I saw Chairman McCall on TV and others, and you're changing your tune now because you said the quiet part out loud that this is all about politics. And so now it's, oh no, the president can do it without legislation.
Here's Democratic Congressmember Robert Garcia. Play the clip.
But I want to remind the public and the majority that Donald Trump...
Will the gentleman yield?
I will not yield. I want to remind the public that Donald Trump and House Republicans also have their own ideas for the border. So let's review the majority's border ideas that they've actually presented. Here they are. Donald Trump actually has said that he wants to build alligator moats along the border. That's one of his incredible ideas. Another idea that Donald Trump has promoted is he actually wants to electrify the border fence and maybe even put some spikes on the border. That's another Donald Trump and MAGA majority border idea. Another idea, which I'm not sure how well it would go, is he wants to actually bomb northern Mexico with missiles. That's another Trump idea. And finally, I think one of the ones that I think is the most grotesque is suggestions that instead we should maybe just shoot migrants in the legs as they cross the border. So once again, the Donald Trump and MAGA plan is alligator moats, bombing northern Mexico, shooting migrants in the legs, and electrifying the fence and putting spikes on them. That is the Donald Trump border plan. And so, again, we are here today with these horrific ideas being presented constantly by the former president. This is all about trying to get Donald Trump reelected. Donald Trump himself is saying he wants no solutions this year out of the Congress, and Secretary Mayorkas and President Biden continue to offer solutions every day and are ready to actually talk about real immigration and border solutions in this country. And
here's a press conference from earlier in the day of MAGA Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, or I should more aptly refer to him as Donald Trump's coffee boy at this point. And MAGA Mike Johnson is asked a question, are you killing this bill for Donald Trump? MAGA Mike's a horrible liar because he goes, oh, that's a ridiculous idea. I am talking to Donald Trump, but that's a ridiculous idea. Here, play this clip.
That's a non-starter in the House. Manu.
The former president has made it clear that he doesn't want you guys to move forward on this, and judging by his comments, he clearly wants to campaign on this issue. Have you spoken to him about the Senate proposal, and are you simply trying to kill this to help him out in the campaign? No,
Manu, that's absurd. We have a responsibility here to do our duty. Our duty is to do right by the American people, to protect the people. The first and most important job of the federal government is to protect its citizens. We're not doing that under President Biden. We have only a tiny, as you know, razor-thin, actually a one-vote majority right now in the House. Our majority is small. We only have it in one chamber, but we're trying to use every ounce of leverage that we have to make sure that this issue is addressed. I have talked to former President Trump about this issue at length, and he understands that. He understands that we have a responsibility to do here. The president, of course, President Trump, wants to secure the country. President Trump is the one that talked about border security before anyone else did. He ran on, as you remember, building the wall. Why? Because he saw this catastrophe coming. He knew that if we did not get control of it, we would be in this situation. And that's why President Trump took executive actions. He used his executive authority to get that system under control.
I showed you Donald Trump's posts before. Here's Democratic Congressmember Benny Thompson. Here's what he had to say during the MAGA Republican committee hearing discussing the impeachment of Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas. Play this clip.
The sham impeachment of Secretary Mayorkas is a baseless political stunt by extreme MAGA Republicans. Chairman Green, Representative Margaret Taylor Greene, and others have pushed for and even fundraised based on this pre-planned, predetermined scapegoating of the Secretary. In a process akin to throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks, Republicans have cooked up vague, unprecedented grounds to impeach Secretary Mayorkas, refusal to follow the law, and a breach of public trust. Neither of the impeachment charges the committee will consider today are a high crime and misdemeanor under Article 2 of the Constitution. No serious person believes they are. Refusal to follow the law or maladministration was deliberately rejected by the framers as grounds for impeachment. Indeed, no official in American history has ever been convicted after impeachment for refusal to follow the law. These disputes are settled in the court system, not through impeachment. Apparently, Republicans are upset they lost in court and are trying to relitigate their cases through impeachment. The Constitution does not allow that.
And by the way, you don't even have to listen to Democrats. You want to hear from Mitt Romney? Well, why don't we hear from Republican Mitt Romney on what's happening right now? Play the clip.
Oh, I think the border is a very important issue for Donald Trump, and the fact that he would communicate to Republican senators and Congresspeople that he doesn't want us to solve the border problem because he wants to blame Biden for it is really appalling. But the reality is that we have a crisis at the border. The American people are suffering as a result of what's happening at the border, and someone running for president ought to try and get the problem solved, as opposed to saying, "Hey, save that problem. Don't solve it. Let me take credit for solving it later."
Okay, you want someone who, even though Mitt Romney's pretty right-wing, I know the MAGA Republicans want to call Mitt Romney a rhino now. He's the rhino. And Donald Trump, who adds $8 trillion of debt, and Donald Trump the rapist, and that's what conservatism means right now to these MAGA Republicans. It isn't. They've hijacked it, and actual real conservatives know that these MAGA Republicans hijacked. But look, you want me to show someone who's more right-wing than Mitt Romney? Okay, I'll show you James Lankford, who's a senator from Oklahoma, who's one of the key negotiators on this bipartisan border deal. By the way, Alejandro Mayorkas, the Secretary of Homeland Security, who MAGA Republicans want to impeach for not enforcing the law, which isn't even a grounds for impeachment. It's not a high crime and misdemeanor, but setting that aside, Alejandro Mayorkas is negotiating the toughest border bill in history with the Republicans right now that MAGA Republicans are trying to kill because they want to whine about the issue. Well, here's James Lankford on Fox this weekend. Play this clip.
That are not being enforced. So why give him this in an election year, the cover of this deal that, critics say is still going to let a lot of people in, but he gets to take a victory lap that he's gotten something done.
Yeah, well, it's definitely not going to let a bunch of people in. It's focused on actually turning people around on it. It is interesting. Republicans 4 months ago would not give funding for Ukraine, for Israel, and for our southern border because we demanded changes in policy. So we actually locked arms together and said, we're not going to give you money for this. We want a change in law. And now it's interesting, a few months later, when we're finally getting to the end, they're like, oh, just kidding. I actually don't want to change in law because it's a presidential election year. We all have an oath to the Constitution, and we have a commitment to say we're going to do whatever we can to be able to secure the border. Just as a quick, for instance, the last 4 months, we've had 50 people cross our border on the terror watch list. 50. We've had tens of thousands of people that were declared by this administration a national security risk that came across our border and were released. It is our constitutional obligation to be able to secure our country as fast as we can secure our country. This puts in mandatory pieces that haven't been there in the past to make this administration actually enforce the law. I would tell you that I don't know of anyone that believes that if President Trump was elected, well, he was president right now, this border would not have this problem. So the thought that somehow President Biden can suddenly be the pro-national security president in the final months of this is...
And notice how Fox frames it to, why would you give the Democrats a winning issue? Why are you going to give them a winning issue? Can we just solve problems for the American people, please? I mean, what a propaganda piece of you-know-what. Here's James Lankford as well, though, talking about how the border bill's also being mischaracterized as just automatically allowing 5,000 people just to show up every day. That's actually not what it is doing. It has a threshold number of 5,000 before the border actually gets mandatorily shut down. But it also has a lot of other things too, like expedited adjudication of asylum seekers, and provides billions of dollars of resources and adds border control. It has the whole package of real things that could actually help. Here's James Lankford again, Republican senator from Oklahoma. Play the clip.
Hear it. Right now, there's internet rumors is all that people are running on. It would be absolutely absurd for me to agree to 5,000 people a day. This bill focuses on getting us to 0 illegal crossings a day. There's no amnesty. It increases the number of Border Patrol agents. It increases asylum officers. It increases detention beds so we can quickly detain and then deport individuals. It ends catch and release. It focuses on additional deportation flights out. It changes our asylum process so that people get a fast asylum screening at a higher standard and then get returned back to their home country. This is not about letting 5,000 people in a day. This is the most misunderstood section of this proposal. Let me tell you briefly what it is. In the last 4 months, we've had 7 days. In 4 months, we've had 7 days that we had less than 5,000 people. This is set up for if you have a rush of people coming at the border closes down, no one gets in. This is not someone standing at the border with a little clicker saying, I'm going to let one more in. We're at 4,999, and then it has to stop. It is a shutdown of the border, and everyone actually gets turned around.
Okay.
That's the focus that we have right now, is how do we actually intervene in this administration and turn people around, not let people in.
No, and by the way, it's, we could talk about the border deal. It's as tough as you get. It's kind of controversially tough. Yet, I guess President Biden's calling the bluff that no matter what you do, because these are all things the Republicans wanted. They said they wanted. Now they got it as part of a compromise, which is even wild that there has to be a compromise reached in order to support NATO, in order to support our allies like Ukraine. So Biden's like, okay, I'll do these things, but we really need to also support Ukraine so that we're not doing Putin's bidding like Donald Trump wants to do. And MAGA Republicans like, no, we don't want to do anything. We're just trying to screw this country and cause a great deal of harm because that's what Donald Trump wants to do. They're saying it out loud. Here's some of the components of the bipartisan Senate bill: mandatory detention of all single adults, mandatory shutdown of the border once average daily migrant encounters hits 5,000, which also includes 1,400 at ports of entry per day. So another 3,600 would be the crossings at the border. Once the 5,000 threshold is hit, a new authority becomes immediately codified into law. There has to be law for these things to be enforced that requires the Border Patrol to immediately remove undocumented immigrants they catch without processing. They would not even get to request asylum. They would immediately be removed. This includes removals back to Mexico and deportations to home countries. By the way, it would be a massive change from the current policy, which is that once an illegal immigrant reaches the U.S. soil, they must be processed via Title VIII and allowed to claim asylum. You have to enforce an existing law, so you need to put a law on the books. Also, the shutdown would not lift the next day. It wouldn't lift until daily encounters are reduced to under 75% of the 5,000 threshold for at least 2 weeks. This means the shutdown authority would not lift until 2 weeks of an average of less than 3,700 migrant encounters per day. New removal authority to immediately remove all migrants who do not have valid asylum claims, which will be determined within 6 months rather than a years-long process we have right now. And President Biden says he's willing to approve this deal. And I think one of the key things too, though, is to still do this compassionately and to do it in a way where you saw what Congressmember Garcia was saying, the MAGA Republicans want to do. They want alligators to eat people and barbed wires, and they want to shoot people. It's like, that's not who we are in the United States. We still have to remember that these are human beings and we need to be compassionate. Our American values should be that we are respectful of all human beings and we treat people and we treat their lives of these human beings with respect and dignity that they reserve, regardless of their circumstances and, in why they're crossing the border. And usually it's for very, very, very desperate and dire reasons. And so this border bill is as tough as you get, but MAGA Republicans don't want to do that. That's the party that Trump built and hopefully will be destroyed at the ballot box, because that ain't Republican. That ain't conservative. That's MAGA. That's Trump. And there's a real way this country can come together, can unify, but we have to just call out everything that we're seeing right now with Trump and MAGA and everything. It is what it is. I'm Ben Meiselas. This is the MeidasTouch Network. Hit subscribe. We're on our way to 3 million subscribers. Thanks for your support. Have a good one.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.